At 4 a.m. on November 13, 2022, in Moscow, Idaho, 4 lives ended inside a home just steps from the University of Idaho campus. The victims were students at the University of Idaho. Their names were Madison Mogen, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, and Chapin. Weeks later, investigators would arrest a doctoral student named Bryan Kohberger. In July 2025, he pleaded guilty and was sentenced to life without parole. The motive, according to court proceedings, remains publicly unclear. This is not a theory video. This is a reconstruction based on publicly filed court documents and official statements. And we begin at the start, with what is documented.
Stay with us as we uncover every twist in this chilling case. And if you want more thrilling and investigative true crime stories, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for the next dark truth we expose.
November 13th, 2022, Moscow, Idaho, an off-campus home on King Road near the University of Idaho campus. Inside that residence were 6 occupants. 4 of them, Madison Mogen, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, and Chapin, would not survive the night. 2 others would. According to investigative records, the victims had been out separately earlier that evening. By approximately 2 a.m., all 4 were back at the residence. What happened next would become the focus of a multi-agency investigation. In the early morning hours, between approximately 4 o'clock and 4:25 a.m., the killings occurred, according to charging documents. The probable cause affidavit describes the use of a fixed-blade knife. According to court documents, one surviving roommate reported seeing an unknown male inside the home during the early morning hours. That account became part of the affidavit supporting the arrest. Later that morning, at approximately 11:58 a.m., a 911 call was placed from the residence. Law enforcement arrived and discovered the 4 victims inside. The scene was secured. Local law enforcement, Idaho State Police, and the FBI began processing evidence. What began as a local homicide investigation would expand rapidly. In the days that followed, digital data, surveillance footage, and forensic analysis would begin shaping the case. But on the morning of November 13th, what existed was only a crime scene and unanswered questions.
For the first time, a chilling look inside the off-campus home where the 4 University of Idaho students were killed in 2022. The house frozen in time, signs of a party, dishes still in the sink. These newly released crime scene photos, some blurred by police, reveal both a typical college life and the horrifying signs of struggle from when Bryan Kohberger killed Madison Mogen, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, and Chapin. Here, blood on the floor, on a door, and on bed sheets. This image showing 2 handprints on the window. And this one, the open glass door, believed to be where Kohberger entered the home.
Are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?
Yes.
The photos, part of a trove of evidence investigators can now make public after Kohberger pled guilty to the murders last month. Police also releasing this security footage from a neighbor's home where at 4:20 a.m. you can hear a dog barking, followed by a car believed to be Kohberger's speeding away. NBC News is not airing all the images released by police, in part out of respect for the families, like Chapin's parents, who told us they don't want every gruesome detail released.
You don't think the public needs to know?
I know there's pieces of it they don't need to know. It's not for public consumption.
And why would you need to know it? I mean, what's the gain on that? There's 0 gain.
Liz Kreutz, NBC News.
In the days following November 13th, investigators began analyzing more than the physical evidence inside the home. They began examining digital records and surveillance footage. The investigation expanded beyond the crime scene. According to the probable cause affidavit, investigators reviewed historical cell phone location data associated with Bryan Kohberger. The documents state that the device had been near the King Road residence on multiple occasions prior to November 13th. On the night of the killings, the phone was reported to have stopped reporting to the network for a period of time, before reconnecting later that morning. Investigators also reviewed surveillance footage from the neighborhood surrounding King Road. According to court documents, a white Hyundai Elantra was observed in the area during the early morning hours. Video footage placed a vehicle matching that description, making multiple passes near the residence before leaving the area. Law enforcement later traced a white Hyundai Elantra registered to Bryan Kohberger.
Investigators had a lot of surveillance video to work with. In addition to tracking Kohberger's cell phone in those hours leading up to and following the murders, all of it helped them put together what they believe is the path Bryan Kohberger took to and from the King Road residence that morning. Continuing our team coverage tonight, Emily Bloom shows us that path investigators believe Kohberger took in the early morning hours of November 13th.
According to the affidavit and surveillance video, it is believed that Bryan Kohberger left this apartment complex shortly before 2:45 in the morning on November 13th. Surveillance video on WSU's campus has that suspect's car driving toward Highway 270, which connects Pullman to Moscow, around 2:50 on November 13th. The white Hyundai Elantra is next tracked going westbound on Indian Hills Drive, just east of Main Street in Moscow, around 3:26. And 2 minutes later, westbound on Steiner Avenue at Main Street. Court documents say multiple surveillance videos catch the same Elantra in the King Road neighborhood at 3:29 in the morning. These videos show the vehicle making 3 passes in the area before leaving on Walenta Drive. Then, around 4:04 a.m., the suspect returns a 4th time. Next, the vehicle is captured leaving the area of the King Road house at a high speed at 4:20 a.m. Another surveillance video catches the Elantra driving south on Walenta Drive again. Around 4:50 in the morning, his phone was tracked near Blaine, Idaho. Further tracking was consistent with Kohberger traveling south to Genesee, west to Uniontown, and north back into Pullman. The route of the white Elantra is just one piece of evidence that's led to Kohberger's arrest. There's been much more that could have been found since that time that hasn't been shared yet and won't be released until a possible trial. Reporting in Pullman, Emily Bloom, 4 News Now.
Investigators also reviewed surveillance footage from the neighborhood surrounding King Road. According to court documents, a white Hyundai Elantra was observed in the area during the early morning hours. Video footage placed a vehicle matching that description, making multiple passes near the residence before leaving the area. Law enforcement later traced a white Hyundai Elantra registered to Bryan Kohberger. Investigators identified that the vehicle had Pennsylvania registration at the time. Kohberger was a doctoral student studying criminology at Washington State University, located approximately 8 miles from Moscow. Records show he was stopped by law enforcement during a cross-country drive with his father in December 2022. The probable cause affidavit also references DNA recovered from a knife sheath found at the scene. According to court documents, that DNA profile was later compared through investigative genetic genealogy. Law enforcement reported that the analysis ultimately linked the profile to Bryan Kohberger.
And joining us now is attorney and former FBI agent Bobby Chacon. So, Bobby, any surprise to you that prosecutors will seek the death penalty here?
No, Kelly, I don't think so. I think they filed an intent to. Now, they are not tied to this. They can always change their mind. The judge can overrule it. There are things that can come into play between now and when he's ultimately sentenced. But I think that, the prosecutor made it clear that they have found the 5 elements, as Alex just outlined, that are required in the Idaho statute for seeking the death penalty. And they went further, the prosecutor went further and said they don't see any of the mitigating circumstances that someone would have to move away from the death penalty. So once you meet those criteria, unless you have some mitigating circumstance to send you away from the death penalty, they intend to seek it.
So the defense team wants to see more of the evidence against Kohberger, including DNA on the knife sheath and cell phone data that allegedly puts him near the crime scene. What do you make of that? And how might his attorneys handle that type of evidence at trial?
Well, the defense is entitled to see all of it, right? All of that. That's the discovery process. They're entitled to see anything, including anything in the government's possession that tends to make him not guilty, exculpatory evidence, we call that. So they're entitled to all the lab reports. They're entitled to some of it, so they can actually take it and go get their own testing done on certain items. So they're entitled to do all that, to test the evidence as much as they can. They're allowed to bring in their own experts. They're allowed to bring in their own lab people to do analysis, to challenge the government's findings. Now, the DNA on the knife sheath is a direct match. What fascinates people in this case is how they got to him, and that's through the genealogical investigative techniques that we now use when we get an unknown source of DNA and how we follow it to a relative and then the ultimate person. And that's of interest in this case. But there's no doubt that the DNA on that knife sheath is directly his.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation.
On December 30th, 2022, Bryan Kohberger was arrested in Pennsylvania. He was later charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary. By this point, investigators had assembled what they described as a converging set of digital, surveillance, and forensic evidence. But assembling evidence is not the same as securing a conviction. After the arrest in December 2022, the case moved from investigation to prosecution. Bryan Kohberger was formally charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary. In May 2023, a grand jury indictment allowed the case to proceed toward trial. Kohberger entered a plea of not guilty. Pre-trial motions followed, including disputes over evidence, venue, and procedural matters. In July 2025, Bryan Kohberger entered a guilty plea as part of an agreement with prosecutors. The agreement removed the possibility of the death penalty. In exchange, he received 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. During sentencing, family members of the victims delivered statements in court. The court formally imposed 4 consecutive life terms.
Drama in court as Bryan Kohberger pleads guilty to stabbing 4 University of Idaho students to death.
The murder of Madison, Mogen, how do you plead guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
For the murder of Kaylee, Goncalves, how do you plead guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
The murder of Xana, Kernodle, a human being, how do you plead guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
The murder of Chapin, a human being, how do you plead guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Bryan Kohberger appeared detached as he walked into that courtroom and seemed to show no emotion as he admitted to killing each of those 4 college students. He didn't make eye contact with his family members seated in the front row or with any of the victims' relatives, but one of those relatives was grief-stricken, wiping away tears as Kohberger entered each of those guilty pleas.
He was just really cold, and he looked very pale and just no emotion when he's admitting to 4 brutal murders, and I didn't see him look over at the victims' families either.
The judge complained about the public outcry over the plea deal, saying his hands are tied.
This court cannot require the prosecutor to seek the death penalty.
The shocking plea deal means Kohberger will be sentenced to 4 consecutive life prison terms without possibility of parole. But he is not required to reveal details of his horrific crimes, and that is angering the victims' families. The father of 21-year-old Kaylee Goncalves called on the judge to reject the plea bargain, calling it a deal with the devil.
You don't think 4 life sentences is justice?
No, of course not. It's daycare. Prison is daycare, people.
Steve, if you could tell the judge one thing today, what would it be?
Do what's right. Do what you know. I mean, 4 people died in their sleep.
There was an emotional scene on the courthouse steps as other members of the Goncalves family entered, but he stayed outside in protest. But the families are divided. The family of Madison Mogen is happy with the deal.
We support
the plea agreement 100%.
Many questions remain unanswered. Do you think the family members will ever hear why this was done?
I know there's this yearning from the family members to find out the motive, to find out where the knife is, to find out why this happened. I've learned that the prosecution and the investigators have told the families that after the sentencing happens, that they'll sit down with them and tell them everything they know.
Kohberger appeared in court in a shirt and tie. He stood to take the oath to tell the truth, perhaps the last time he will ever wear civilian clothes.
Although the legal process concluded with a plea and sentencing, questions remain. A clear motive was not publicly established during court proceedings. The record documents the charges, the plea, and the sentence. It does not answer every why. In the end, the legal system produced a result. 4 lives were taken. A defendant pleaded guilty, and the sentence was imposed. What remains is the record, and the responsibility to report it accurately.
You're watching Truth in Shadows, the State Crime Archives, where we uncover the darkest crimes, the betrayals of trust, and the stories hidden in the margins of public record. Here, every crime leaves a shadow, and every shadow tells the truth. If you're drawn to true crime told with depth, honesty, and cinematic detail, subscribe now. Like this video, share it, and join us as we explore cases where justice and deception collide.